York is 400 million years old. It is the ancient seabed, and that little pockets of natural gas that they're trying to extract actually is the decomposed life matter from that 400 million year old ocean. And the process in which they use is they drill down and then horizontally, and they pump a toxic mixture of between 2 to 7 million gallons of our fresh water that they get out of our stream, the companies, corporations get out of our streams and out of our aquifer, and they pump that full of hundreds of thousands of pounds of some of the most toxic chemicals on the planet, and they basically force and pressure that water down in order to crack open the rock. And in cracking open the rock, they create these little fissures in which the gas then travels out through, and they get the gas up at the well. The process has been around for some time, but it was really in 2005 with the Energy Policy Act by then President Bush and Dick Cheney, who really spearheaded that they were able to make this profitable by getting rid of the most important environmental and really public health laws that exist in the United States, including the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Superfund Law, and many others. And part of what they did also in that was they made this toxic concoction of chemicals that are used in the process proprietary secret, meaning that the companies don't have to say publicly or divulge at any point what chemicals they are using. Which, if people knew, they would be more upset about. So in 2005, that exemption was created for this industry, and since then we've seen kind of a rampant growth of fracking across the country. Has anyone here seen Gasland? In 2010, Gasland, which was an Academy Award nominated documentary, came out by a guy named Josh Fox, who was just an everyday citizen like us, who had a little bit of an arts background, and made this film where he traveled across the country to different places where fracking was happening, including Northeast Pennsylvania, Texas, Wyoming, and he showed the first-hand accounts of people that were having water contamination. Like, most of the well-known image of fracking is the water faucet with the water catching on fire. That was one of the first things that I learned about, and it's pretty much one of the most egregious, I think, almost genetic understandings of something being very wrong. Water is not supposed to catch on fire. And I think that that's been an image that's really shocked people into understanding how just devastating and how out of balance this practice is. From that time in 2010, there's been a real push and resistance to this. What we're seeing around the country right now are not only major health implications for people that have gotten sick. A lot of times people's water goes bad from the fracking itself, and there's a couple of different ways in which the water gets contaminated. But they don't always recognize it right off the bat, because it doesn't just automatically turn like black and cloudy. Sometimes it looks the same, but it's tainted with these chemicals, it's tainted with the natural gas or methane, and folks don't realize it until they do realize it, which is usually after people get sick or enough problems happen. When you bathe in water that's been contaminated, you sometimes get skin rashes and lesions. People projectile vomit, there's hair loss, a lot of intestinal problems, long-term exposure, of course, to cancer, and other like very severe illnesses. That's with the water contamination. There's also the situation of air contamination, which I would say is just as bad, if not worse, because you can choose whether or not to drink or bathe in your water. To a certain extent, it costs a lot of money to not be on your water supply, but you really have absolutely no ability not to breathe the air. And what we're seeing across the country is from the gas infrastructure itself, people are getting very sick from the air pollution. it's hard to I usually have a PowerPoint where I go through a lot of the impacts and what's happening, but as you can kind of hear just from that little snippet, it's pretty bad. The gas and oil industry has kind of gotten to this desperate final push for oil and gas across the world, and the reason why they're doing this is because they're running out of conventional sources. If there were still more conventional fields of natural gas, which is when you used to be able to drill down, hit a pocket of natural gas under the ground and suck it up, they would be doing that. This whole operation is very expensive, it's labor intensive, it's resource intensive. And the real push that we've been making across the state and around the country is that we don't need to be on this path. Renewable energy sources are available. We should be pumping money into that and research and really getting more and more renewable energy happening and not going down this more of dirty fossil fuels. Some of the other problems with fracking that we're finding out now is that from the natural gas and methane, natural gas is methane, leakages that are happening with the process across the country, it's actually, methane is 20 times more potent of a gas, greenhouse gas. So what we're doing is we're spiking the environment right now with methane, and we're actually catalyzing and speeding up climate change. So the more methane gets released into the atmosphere, the worse it's going to be for the climate. I'll just take a step back, and I really do want to open this up a little bit more because I'm not sure, there's probably a varying degree of understanding about the issue itself. But one of the things that the industry has been very clever in doing is saying that this is more, gas is greener than coal. It's cleaner and greener to burn gas than it is coal. And part of the reason why we've gotten to this point of this situation is not only from the exemptions, but because there's been an acceptance of this practice, because many of the environmental groups for a long time really believed that this was a way in order for us to transition out of coal onto gas because it burns cleaner as a fossil fuel. And so we're finding out more and more that that's not the case, yet a lot of people have yet to come up to speed from the environmental movement. It's becoming more and more clear, but still a lot of the elected officials, including our own President Obama, is very much bought into this narrative that we need this natural gas from fracking because it's going to get us off of coal and it's going to actually help climate change, when actually the opposite is true. It's making climate change worse. So that's one of the major narrative problems with this when you hear about it in the media. The other thing is that this creates a lot of jobs. Well, first off, those aren't the kind of jobs that we want, are people coming around and fracking the earth for natural gas. It's very toxic. Actually, worker fatalities on a gas fracked rig are 7 times more than other industries. We know some people in Pennsylvania who have been in the gas industry, and they are whistleblowers now, and some of them are very sick, and they've been contaminated by the fracking fluids, they've been contaminated by the process, and they're on their way out in a not very good way, a very slow and painful way. The jobs that are created are short-term. A lot of the jobs come from areas where folks drill, like down in Texas and Arkansas. In some parts of the country, and North Dakota is a big one, where there's a huge fracking boom with oil. They create these massive man camps, basically trailers and stuff where people live. They come up, they do their fracking work, and then the checks go back home, and ultimately they go back home, and what's left is a very devastated place and community for the people that are unfortunately unable to get out. The other thing with the jobs is that, they're really affecting existing industries. So here in New York and some parts of the state where they would frack, we do actually have the tourism economy. We have an agriculture and a growing dairy economy. So that other industries get impacted. You can't you can't have dairy cows, or you can't water your crops when you don't have any water. Just recently, last week, we worked with a man out in western Pennsylvania who was a dairy and cattle. He was a cattle farmer named Terry Greenwood, and he passed away from a rare form of brain cancer, which who knows how he got it. But we do know that for some time his cows were drinking that spill of the frack fluid. They were drinking the fracking water. And that season, a couple months later, he had about 19 cows, and I believe about 10 of them had dead calves. So, I mean, that's just one of many stories out there about what's going on to people and about to their livestock and to the land itself. So, I mean, basically, we're really in a major crisis right now, and it's important that people are aware of it, that we're doing what we can to really amplify the message about what's going on, and that we really have to work together to turn this around, because right now we are still actually in an early phase of this kind of extreme fossil fuel extraction. We're looking at least 20 more years of it until really the well dries up, and that's just too long. So I know a lot of you are from different places and kind of battling it out state by state as we have been, but the good news is that we do have a growing movement, and that people are waking up. And the faster that we wake up and the more work that we do now, the better off we're all going to be in the long term as we really proceed towards the future that we know is possible, and it's really just right around the corner, and that's renewable energy and not this dirty fossil fuel extraction. So I can feel everyone's energy drop. I don't want to take it down too far. It is, it's very sad what's happening across the country, and it's very sad what's happening to a lot of people, but we can turn this around. I like to always talk about the kind of positive nature of social movement. So I was a social movement major in college. I studied student movements primarily, but also the civil rights movement, the women's movement. And there were really moments in our history where it just looked very bleak. It didn't look like anything we were gonna be able to come around and change some of these really intense social justice or environmental issues that we've been facing for the past couple hundred years as people who have come here to this Turtle Island. But there have been moments where there's just been major breakthrough because small groups of dedicated people grow into large groups of dedicated people. They were able to change the course of history. So I do believe it's possible. It's a lot of work, but really our children or grandchildren or great-grandchildren, not just of us, but of all the living beings on Mother Earth, are really depending on us to take a stand and do what we can. And there's something that everybody here can do. You can get involved. You can check out our website, frackaction.com. And there's a multitude of different organizations working on this place by place. I know a guy in South Africa that I'm going to connect you to. And we just have to do everything that we can to turn around. The only reason that we've been successful here in New York and holding this off now for, I believe it's been 6 years, is because people got involved and took action and did what they could to raise awareness in the communities and do what we can. And I'm happy to help and communicate with anybody here about what's going on in your area and what you can do to help if you feel inclined to get involved. So with that, I'll just kind of open it up and leave it for some questions.